Hello everyone. Good evening. I am so excited to be here with you today. Welcome to today's edition of Fat Talks. I am your host for today. My name is Shiba Ganyana, and we have a very important topic that we are bringing for you today. It is called Letting Go of Past Shame and Trauma as a Pathway to Thriving. We have a very special guest with us in studio today, and I can't wait to introduce her to all of you. I'm just going to give some time for people to log on. And as I do that, I'd want to remind you that we are live on Smart 24 TV. So if you feel like the Twitter space on the Smart 24 TV YouTube channel, as well as the Fidelis Leadership Institute YouTube channel. So without further ado, I would love to introduce our guest for today, Mrs. Fortunate Ingavire. Yes, Fortunate, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's so good to be here.
Thank you. So Fortunate is going to be taking us through the topic of letting go of past shame and trauma as a pathway to thriving. Before I let her speak, let me just give all of you a brief background on our guest today. So Fortunate is an advocate of the High Court of Uganda. She is currently working as the legal manager at Airtel Uganda, and she is a member of the Uganda Law Society, where she has served as a member on the Young Lawyers Committee and also an in-house counsel. She is a mental health enthusiast, and she co-founded a company called Reciprocity Uganda, which is an organization that offers free mental health. She is also a mentor and a coach at the Girls for Girls. I know you guys have seen Girls for Girls around, so she is a certified mentor and coach there. So wow, Big CV, fortunately, we are so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Shiva. It's so good to be here.
Yes. So moving on to the topic at hand today, it's a very heavy topic, but we're going to try and make it friendly. Yes, and also consumable. So we're talking about letting go of past trauma and shame as a way to thriving. And just to give people a background and insight on what this is about, because I know when I was posting these flyers around, people were asking me, what is this? Like, what do you mean by shame? What do you mean by trauma? So could you let us know what exactly you mean by
to sharing quite a lot on trauma and shame with everyone. Asking about what shame is and what trauma is really. For me, shame is, without being too legalistic or putting in too much English, shame is anything that brings us some sort of humiliation, something that makes us a bit inadequate, something that makes us question ourselves, something that makes us feel less than enough. So anything that brings you that kind of feeling humiliated, feeling unworthy, feeling undeserving, inadequate, embarrassed, insecure, that is shame. And sometimes we really don't know what it is until we go to a place of introspection and think of what it is. Now, trauma, on the other hand, is something, it's an effect of an incident that puts you in a place of pain, deep pain and stress. Yeah. So let's use an example. I don't know how many of us have seen stories today of two young girls who are raped in Kaunda and Matuga.
Yes.
Now, these young girls who are raped, that incident of rape is traumatic. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a traumatic experience.
Yes.
Now, if it is not dealt with at a later date, it will become shameful. Yeah. So to break it down further, a traumatic experience leads to shame. So one leads to the other. And if it is not dealt with, it simply means that it will continue to linger on for a really long time. If we are to talk about, let's say, marriage, if your husband or your wife beats you, if you're a guy and you're listening in, if you're a lady and you're listening in, if any of those things happen to you, domestic violence, that thing is traumatic, but it also shames you. So it will not be very easy for you to go and tell your friends, oh, by the way, my spouse beats me. Or let's say your spouse, there's been maybe some sort of infidelity. That infidelity may not necessarily be traumatic, but the feelings that you go through after finding out are shameful. So you will not openly share with your friends or with anyone for that matter that, oh, I have gone through an experience of infidelity and this is how it affected me. Then if we are to talk about loss, something I relate with. If you've gone through a deep loss of someone that you deeply love and care about, it's traumatic. And for some, it's usually after that loss that you begin to experience shame, because I'll use an example myself. When you lose a child and you begin to question your capability to parent, to mother, you get into a place of shame, because then it becomes a thing that it's not necessarily the usual. And because it is not the usual thing that happens to everyone, you're put in a place of shame because you're questioning your motherhood style, your mothering style, and things like that. I hope that gives you perspective and everyone who is listening in.
Yes, it does. Okay. Thank you for that, because the next question that I wanted to ask you, you've sort of answered it, but I wanted you to just expound more on it, is if the two are interchangeably linked, can I feel shame without necessarily feeling trauma, or do they go hand in hand usually from your experience?
Okay, so first of all, I need to be very clear that I'm not a mental health expert. Like you introduced me, I'm just a mental health enthusiast. And what this implies that I take keen interest in issues to do with mental health. And that is the basis for which we founded Reciprocity Uganda with a friend of mine called Gloria Kembabazi. So whether there is a link between the two of them, research shows that mental health issues like post-trauma stress disorder are as a result of an incident that happened to you, and usually because of that happened after that, you get into a place of shame. And it's the same thing with issues like bipolar. 1 minute you're okay, the minute you're not okay, and because you realize that you have outbursts that other people interrelated in a way that some post-traumatic incidents ultimately result into shame, or they shame you because also I think you've heard a couple of times that people don't usually talk about mental health challenges. And this is because of the purported belief that usually it's isolating, and then the stigma that's related with it, so people don't come out to talk about it. And the only reason that people feel stigmatized and the reason they are not coming out to talk about it is because they think that it is harmful to have a mental health challenge. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. I like that you brought that up, because I know, at least for me growing up, there was a lot of stigma around that sort of subject. If you say that maybe you're depressed, or if you say that you're sad, like, people never used to understand, they'll be like, oh no, Mumutwale Butabika, and it was like a taboo, like she has gone to Butabika, something is wrong with her. So I like that these conversations are being had and people are being more open, honest to talking about this. So still on that topic, I know how free you are to share if you've had any experience of the like with that sort of, with shame or trauma in your life.
Okay, so I think I have about 3 examples I can use. So first of all, as you can see, one would be body size. Yeah, so looking at me and at my big age, it's the assumption is that you should probably look different, probably taller, fatter, that kind of thing.
Yes,
and personally, I've never really been big. So from the time I was a little child, I was small. And I remember in my primary school, and I've shared a bit about this on my YouTube, there's a young child who felt I was very small. That a nickname for me. Today I'll not share, but if you want to know it, check my YouTube because I share. So this person thought it was important for them to give me a nickname because I was very small. And so growing up, I kept wondering why I was not exactly that big as everyone. And then, of course, as I continued to grow, like in P7, S1, you would see people have a bigger bust. Yeah, and your bust is not anyone to feel woman enough. They need to be a certain kind of size. But I also used to watch models, and models were very slim. And at a certain point, I needed to be a model. I even had to go to work on TV. I remember a screen test at NTV. And I think that's the point where I also say that there's another thing that shamed me, my voice. So because of the way I speak, I'm not I don't usually project my voice. But of course, circumstances have taught me to learn how to project, yeah? So that time when I went for the screen test, the reason they kicked me out was because my voice was very low. So now, going back to this other issue, because I was very small, but I think for one model, they were small, I began to get comfortable. Also, I saw my contemporaries going to the gym to lose weight. I'm like, okay, so this is trend, you get it? So that's one of the things that shamed me and probably would traumatize me, because imagine living life thinking you're not enough because you're not that big, yeah?
Yes.
So the other one would be loss. So this is basically traumatic because, you know, and if there's a mother out there, I believe they relate. There's nothing more traumatic than conceiving a child. And after conceiving that child, you go through a natural birth, probably bear some episiotomy stitches. And then giving birth is so traumatic.
I can imagine.
Giving birth is traumatic, yeah. But that's not to scare you. You'll be fine. Yeah, but you have that child, and then after having that child, gone through that entire phase of the 9 months, the trauma of pushing that child, and the intrusion that happens when they're trying to measure the centimeters you're at before you can push. And then this child just changes address in a snap of a finger. And you now begin to imagine another life without this child. Yeah. So that is traumatic. But beyond the trauma is you beginning to question your motherhood style, how you mothered this child, asking yourself, did I not do enough? Why did God have to give me this child and then take the child away? Why? So that point when you go to that place of asking yourself those questions brings you shame, because I mean, every day you're watching other people who have their children with them, and then you're wondering what it is they did differently you could have done.
Yes.
And I also know that there are those who are lucky to have other children, and that is like probably their redemption season and restoration season. But then there are also those who do not have that privilege of having a child again, or who are in the process of waiting. And every single day you move around with that dent of, I had a child, I no longer have a child. And society doesn't make it any for you, because you know how they say, for example, there is Namwandu and all that stuff. You're now a mom without a child, and yet you had a child. So for some, you still carry the burden of that shame, a shame that you did not want for yourself, that you did not look for. Yeah.
Yes.
The third story, I've made too many.
The
other one would be maybe failure. Even workplace, it could be school. If they're young people, because this is a leadership institute, so I'm sure you have very many young people and old people. So if you are one of those people who are sticklers for good performance, sticklers for good performance, and then all of a sudden you don't get the results you are looking for, that you hoped you would get, and you fail. That incident of failure shames you. Or let's talk about relationships. You love this girl or this boy, and then for some reason the relationship does not work. That rejection shames you. And for some, because of personality types, it becomes a traumatic sort of thing, because there are people who are deep lovers. And if you're a deep lover and all of a sudden someone just says, it's literally it's traumatic, because you do not expect. And then also it goes back to the core of your being as a person, because you begin to question yourself of, am I not enough? Why did they have to leave me? And then why did I fail? You get it? Things like those.
Okay. Wow. First, I have to say you've given us so much information that I'm processing right now. Some of them have been they are very heavy topics, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. But as the topic for today is, we are learning how to let go of the past, shame and trauma. So with you talked about 3 different scenarios that carry different, and I just wanted to ask, there've been very many scenarios where some people will have their shame, they'll have their trauma, but maybe they'll think, okay, like maybe my thing, is it valid for me to feel like this? Like some people are going through this and this. So that position of measuring shame and trauma, some people may feel like, no, for you're like what you talked about, that your size, maybe some people look at it and be like, shit, people want to be small. Like, how can that be something that's traumatizing for you? So how do you deal with or how can you handle that concept of measuring shame? Is all shame? Is some shame greater than others? Like, are all the shames equal if it's English? Yes.
Okay, so thank you for that. Now, first of all, over time, I have learned that everyone's I know who it was that said that all our dreams are valid, but I think it's the same thing with the things that we go through. There is no way you can underplay someone's experience because you feel yours is greater. So all shame is shame.
I love that.
All shame is shame. All shame is shame. There's such thing as this shame is greater than the other one, because we are all different. We are wired differently. We process things differently. And because of that, it simply implies that every little thing that I go through cannot be underplayed. It might be very small for you, but for me it is not. And I think going into a place of acknowledging the fact that this is what I'm going through, this is what I have gone through, and I'm now dealing with it, is very important, because then you realize, begin to move past that shame. But once you begin to underplay it and undercover it and say, no, it doesn't matter, this one is doing something deeper, then you'll never deal with it. But years later, it will come out and it will be projected.
Okay, thank you for that. So viewers, I hope you can hear me. All shame is shame. From Fortunate So nothing is too
Just
big,
got to
nothing,
you, baby.
yeah, nothing is too big, nothing is too small. All shame is valid. Your pain is valid. So don't invalidate yourself because you feel like this person's shame is more. Yes, I'd like to just acknowledge some of our listeners. Mr. Luke Kamoga, you are welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Yes, Mr. Timo, thank you for tuning in. Hebo Agatha, thank you for tuning in. And before I continue, I would just like to take a short break and introduce Fortunate to our little game that we play. We have a game that we play here on our show called One Truth and Two Lies. So basically, you're going to tell us 3 statements about yourself, one of which is true, and then our audience will guess which one is true and which ones are lies. So, shoot.
One, I am the firstborn of 9 children.
9.
Yeah.
9 children.
Then
Okay.
something I think you won't believe, I have never entered an aeroplane. And then
Legal manager, Ethel.
I enjoy going to the club.
You enjoy going to the club.
Yeah.
Okay. So viewers, I hope you've heard. Please guess which one is true for our guest today. Number 1, she has never entered an airplane. Number 2, she enjoys going to the club. And number 3 is
The firstborn of
9 children. So there'll be a poll running. Please lock in your answers and vote which one is true about our guest today. Is Fortunate. So just to get back on track with the interview, so we've talked about shame, we've talked about trauma, we've defined them, given examples. What impact do you think, or from your experience, would you say that trauma and shame can have on someone in terms of their mental health?
Quite a number of them. But again, like I said, since I'm not a mental health expert,
yes, disclaimer, everyone.
I will not leave everything here.
Yes.
I'll encourage us to also seek mental health advice. So one, if you have gone through shame or trauma, it's a high. You're going to go through depression. If you have gone through shame or trauma, chances are going to be very stressed. If you have gone through shame or trauma, chances are very high that you're going to have anxiety bouts. Yes. You'll be very anxious sometimes because you fear that there will be a repeat incident. And then, of course, I think you've heard of PTSD, post-trauma stress disorder. Yes. That one is very post-trauma. Yes. So it comes from trauma.
Can we just like expound on it for people who don't know? Because some people hear those words on TV, in movies, that I have PTSD, but they don't know what it is.
Okay. Again, I will encourage us to invite people like Grace Linda to come and tell us the detail. Yes. But what it is in basic terms really is that you've gone through trauma, and then because of the trauma, you're having several experiences. It could be eating, it could be that all of a sudden your heart is beating faster, or you just don't like things that you used to like before. You're beginning to exhibit some physical illnesses that you didn't have before. But once you go into genealogy of your experiences, then you realize that it's because of a past trauma that you've gone through. And because of that trauma, these things continue to exhibit. So sometimes they'll give you medication for it. It could be talk therapy, but it is because of an experience that you've gone through that has traumatized you. So that is what TSD is.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on. What sort of advice would you give for people? Because some people do go through a lot of things and they get embarrassed. Maybe they'll feel like if I tell someone, they'll laugh at me, my peers they won't understand. what advice would you give them in terms of seeking for help or dealing with it in such situations?
Okay, thank you for that. Now, for that particular issue, the starting point is for anyone to go into a place of introspection. When you're in a place of introspection, you're able to identify several things. It could be internal, external. And once you're in there, then you begin to categorize those issues and also what help you need and where you can get that help from. So it all begins from a place of introspection. Yeah, that's my belief. Then once you get into a place of introspection and then write all those things down, you begin to go into a place of acceptance that, you know what, I am dealing. Yeah. And if I am dealing, it simply means I need to seek help. And once you begin to seek help or acknowledge that I'm going through something, I've accepted it, I need to seek help, you now look for help. Now, looking for help means that, one, you probably plug into a community that's going to support you, maybe a support group, or go and see a counselor or any trusted person that you can speak to. And then after that, be very intentional about it. Because it is one thing to know that you need help, it's another thing to seek the help, and it's another thing to stay the course. So being intentional keeps you on course. And then, of course, once you're plugged into a community, that means you have accountability partners. You have someone who can check in on you and say, how are you doing today? What can we do differently? How do you feel today? And then I have learned over time that sometimes we need to let nature take its course. So don't try too hard to cover it up or to come out and say I'm okay just because you're now assuming that I'm okay. Because you know, sometimes in the process of trying to cover up things, when someone asks you, Shiba, today how are you doing?
You may just break down.
Or if you don't break down, you just say I'm fine.
Yeah.
And because you're saying you're fine, it's because you are trying to cover it up. So it's actually okay for you to break down. Because once you break down, the person who is asking is going to know how to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is you letting nature take its course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I have learned on my journey that sometimes the next best course for you is to encourage others. Because as you're encouraging others, you're inadvertently encouraging yourself. And that also means that you are inadvertently allowing yourself to grow through whatever it is that you've experienced. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like a short acronym for me for healing. Yeah. H, accept that you need to seek help.
Yes.
A, accept that you're dealing with something. Encourage others. Interchange the two letters first, but yeah. L is for live and love as you go through the process. Because sometimes when we are dealing with something, our easiest option is to go and lock ourselves up somewhere in a room and deal from the room. Yeah, isolate. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I is intentionality.
Yeah.
And then N is for you to be natural. And then G is for you to grow through your season. Allow yourself to grow through the season.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, I need to send out shout outs to my friends, Loyola and Timothy. Are they still there? If they are there, I'm sending them shout outs because they are my accountability people. Yeah, that's my, like, one of my inner circles. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. I love the acronym. I wish we could have it written down. I'm just going to ask the team to write that down in the comments. The acronym is healing. H for seeking for help. E for
encouraging others.
A for acceptance.
L for
letting go.
Living fully and loving.
I for introspection
and intentionality.
N for
being natural. Letting nature take its course.
Let nature take its course. And G for growing.
Yeah. Allowing yourself to grow through the season.
Allow yourself to grow through the season. So we're just going to write that acronym down in the comments. And yes, I love that. And I love that you said that you have to have a support system, because I think with the society we're we're in now, especially with social media, we have access to people, but like we're so lonely. People are so lonely. Yet they have all this access to social media, they have all this access to people, but you'll find someone isolates, like they'll go through a problem and they don't want to seek help. So you guys get support partners, reach out to your friends, and go through what you go through. That's my little one. So I just want to remind you guys that we have a poll running. Please guess which one of these 3 statements is true about Fortunate. 1, she's the firstborn of 9 children. 2, she has never stepped on an aeroplane. 3, she loves going to the bar. To party.
All of them.
All of
Can just
them.
put them together, bundle them up.
Yes. So at this juncture, as people vote, the poll is running in the comment section. So you guys can punch in what you think is true about Fortunate, and we'll have our answers at the end of the space. Just to take you back to what we're talking about, can you let us know, how do you deal, you personally, as Fortunate, making peace with the past?
Personally, introspection and journaling. That is my comfort place. So I will go, because of my personality type, I'll go to a corner, deeply think about everything going on around me. And then recently I have begun to journal again. Well, I think I used to a lot, because I've found a couple of notebooks from my past. So I think it's a coping mechanism for me. Introspection, journaling.
Okay.
And praying.
Okay. That's typically Fortunate does a lot of introspection, and she does a lot of journaling. I know journaling is something that also helps me so much. I think I've been journaling since I was a teenager.
Nice.
Yes, and it let out whatever you're feeling at that time. And I also like going back. You know, when you go back and you look through what you journaled, and you're like, hey, look, I made it through this. So I can. Things are good. Things
it's
are
a healthy way of coping.
Yes. So, would you say that you compartmentalize your grief or trauma? Or do you think that is something that happens a lot, especially in the society we're in? I know you talked about the acting like we are okay when we are not, and that's something I've also noticed a lot here. The quote-unquote toxic positivity, where you have to be okay. The people tell you, just think positive. So you find yourself, you're not letting yourself feel the feelings or emotions. You probably keep this for later. So do you think that in our way society has programmed us to compartmentalize these sort of things?
Yeah, I think society has done that to us. But for me personally, I think it's the yes and no answer.
Okay.
And why is that? Because I have learned to let myself feel the feels as they come. Like, for example, we could be talking right now, and then suddenly something triggers me and I'll cry. And it is okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah?
Okay.
But then also, there will be times when the grace of God is sufficient. And it will not happen.
Yes.
So like, for example, a couple of minutes back when we talked about loss, on another day, tears would have flown, probably. And it is okay. But, and that is because I've gone into that place of realizing that it is okay for me to feel my feels. It is okay for me to process them. And it is okay for me to slowly forge away and figure out how to deal with them. Yeah, as opposed to me assuming it never happened.
Yeah,
because that is lying to yourself. And I think that is the biggest problem most of us have. You compartmentalize the issues, and then a few years ahead, this thing is still coming out.
You get triggered or something.
Yeah, you're triggered almost half the time. You're at the office and then you're acting in a way that is irrational and you do not know why.
Yeah.
And that is because there's something that happened to you that you never dealt with. Yeah. Or you are moving around. Let's talk about people who never really, who are non-committal. Usually when you dig in and try to see why they are non-committal, you will find that at their earlier years, there was an issue of non-commitment from somebody close to them. Yeah. And it's the same thing when you look around your friendships. When you have deep conversations with them, you will realize that most of your close friends have something that is akin to what you have. So you will find what they say, well, you talked about toxic positivity, but then you will find that pain attracts pain. So you will find, for example, if you were raised by a single mom or a single dad, you will find that most of your close friends either have a single parent and or they've gone through a particular incident that you do not know about, and because you've never really talked about, you do not know it. And that is because most of us don't talk about our issues.
That's true.
And that is because we think that if we do, we are...
Will be judged or...
shamed.
Yeah.
Trauma. So you basically choose that I'm better off leaving it at the back, act like it never really happened, and then one day it explodes. So for me as a person, I have learned to deal. Of course, sometimes it's hard, but gradually, because it's a lifestyle, it gets easier. And journaling means that you don't have to look for Shiba to tell us, Shiba, I am dealing. This is it. Because you've already dealt with your journal. Your journal is like your mini therapy. Yeah. And if you're afraid of going to a therapist, you'll find that that works for you. But also, the therapist does the same thing the journal does. The only difference is the therapist will ask you particular questions that will lead you to another point, which the journal will not do if you're not a person who is deeply introspective. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, yes and no, but most of us are yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like this is a conversation that we need to accord more time with the specialists that you talked about, because some of these topics are very important and I think that they have to be focused on. But now that you've mentioned coping mechanisms and probably therapy and seeking for help, I would want you to tell us more about your company. I understand that you have a company that offers help to people struggling with mental health. So if you could just tell our viewers more about that, maybe they can look you up. Maybe if someone who is struggling can look you up.
Also, about that, my friend and I started a company in 2018 called Reciprocity Uganda. And we had an initiative where we're offering free mental health support, especially during COVID. And we still do, mainly teletherapy, because we believe that because there's a sort of trauma and shame related to mental health experiences and other challenges we go through, sometimes people do not want to have a face-to-face interaction. So ours is more of send me a message, tell me what it is you're dealing with, how I can help you, and then I will try to explore ways of helping you. So we have a couple of volunteers. So we need more who handle the therapy sessions. And we can be reached on 256-782-05-5717 or 0755 9047.
I'm going to ask you to slow down a bit and just say that a bit more slowly so that our team can write that down in the comment section.
But also you can check out our pages on Twitter. We have a page on Twitter. It's called Reciprocity Uganda. Yeah.
Okay, Reciprocity Uganda. We'll definitely check it out. Those of you who feel like you need some help, you can't deal, you need to cope, please check out their pages, get the help that you need. And yeah, so the other question that I have for you, because you've talked about different ways of dealing is, do you think as Ugandans, because now I want to give it a Ugandan feel, I know Ugandans have different opinions when it comes to the subject of mental health. It's something that they are learning to embrace now. It's good, but it was not the case before. But do you think as Ugandans, we process trauma and grief in a healthy way?
That's a very hard question.
Yes.
But I feel like this is something we already evolved. I do not think we process in a healthy way. I already made a disclaimer. I'm not a mental health expert. I'm just an enthusiast.
Yes.
Now, why do I say that? Like we've said, we all love to keep it under the wraps.
Yes.
Yeah? Keeping it under the wraps means that we shall not talk about it. It has not happened. And if it has happened, you're not the first person. You'll be okay. Yeah.
Guma.
Yeah. Yeah. So that happens for literally everything.
Yeah.
So for example, these two young girls who were raped this morning, the mothers will probably go to the police officer, and then they will open a case file, and in a couple of days it will be closed. Yeah. And unfortunately, because of social media now, you'll find that maybe you know the people. But without social media, what this would mean is that the parents will go to the room and say, we cannot talk about this, it did not happen. Yeah?
Yes.
You, the child, you'll be okay. And you probably, they don't even give you an opportunity as a child to say anything.
Yeah.
So it's only after you grow up that you realize that, wait, this happened to me. Now let's talk about marriage. They are beating you. There's a lot of infidelity perhaps. And there's so many other things that are happening in there.
Yes.
And once you go to a singer or even talk to your parents, the first thing they'll tell you is that, Mwala, daughter, we've been there. You're not the first person. Yeah, we have been there. We have seen these things happen a million times. You're not the first person. Even us, it happened to us, but we are still married.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, that is the way we cope.
Yes.
Is it healthy? Do you think it's healthy?
No, it's not healthy. Definitely not.
Okay. So that is the biggest challenge there is. That's the biggest challenge there is.
Yes.
So
sorry, our viewers, it looks like the Twitter space has disconnected, but we are trying to get back on. You can carry on, Fortunate. Sorry for that.
No, it's okay. So what I was trying to say is that, unfortunately, well, for us, you might think these are healthy ways. They're not.
Yes.
Then for others, especially now that we are older, usually the first place we'll go to is, let me go to the bar and drink some beer.
That's true.
Let me go and find, if it's a relationship issue, let me go and find someone else to help me with this.
To move on from this. Yes.
Because I think I shared still in my last video on shame that there's a trend now of, let's say in marriages, where you find that you'll find two couples and all of them are literally dealing with their issues with another couple.
Wow.
Yeah, which is quite absurd.
Yes.
But this is because apparently, let's say as a couple we have a problem, and because we cannot communicate about it, as the wife, I choose to go and look for my friend outside there who can accommodate me and listen to me. And then before you know it, one thing leads to the other. The same applies to the gentleman, my spouse. And you see, at the end of the day, that does not resolve the problem. But that is your way of deciding that I am processing and dealing. Is it healthy? Absolutely not. Yeah? So, as Ugandans, as we, I don't think we deal in a healthy way, but maybe it also comes from a certain place, and we need to first go to that place of figuring out why we deal the way we deal.
Yes.
And this could be from societal expectations. What does the society expect from me? And if this is what the society expects from me, how do I continue to deal? Or how do I change the narrative and begin to deal differently?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lot. I personally also think that as Ugandans, we are getting there, but not quite, because there's a lot of things with tradition involved as well. And there's a lot of, like you said, your elders, probably your parents saying, no, you shall be okay. We went through this. It's okay. So I think there are steps. There's still more to be done. There's still more that we can do. And I commend you for starting that company, because God knows we need all the help we can get. Maybe what I noticed is some people, like friends that I have conversations with, usually say that these things of mental health, they are for Bazungu, they are for people who are probably wealthy families who can afford the services, the therapy services, because therapy is expensive. Let's not beat around the bush.
Yeah, it is.
It's very expensive. So I'd just like to go to the poll. We had asked our viewers to guess which statement is true about Fortunate. 1, she said she is the firstborn of 9 kids. 2, she has never entered a plane. And 3, she enjoys to go to the club. So the poll says 58.3% say you're the firstborn. Wow. Fortunate, you look like a firstborn.
Really?
33.3% say you have never entered a plane, and 8.3% think that you enjoyed going to the club. So you're not giving off club vibes. You're giving off firstborn of 9 kids vibes. I don't know. So Fortunate, maybe you can tell